I am very happy to welcome you all back to Riverview. This is a sort of realistic North American city we've been developing through 3 early access episodes here in City Skylines 2. And I asked you guys whether you'd be interested in seeing us continue this series, and the response has been overwhelmingly positive. So let's embark on a new chapter as we'll try some new techniques for transitioning from city to countryside, developing rural areas and farmland mixed in with the ever-growing suburban sprawl of our growing metro area. And as always, if you enjoy my content, hit the like button and consider subscribing. More than 80% of my viewers aren't subscribed, so maybe you've just forgotten to. Thanks in advance. Oh man, it feels pretty good to be back here in Riverview, and this time not with a stressful schedule for what the episode can actually contain or the specific time it must be done. Pretty relaxing actually. We finished off episode 3 by building the city of East Riverview across the river here, and East Riverview has grown into quite a nice little town with about 4,000 residents and more or less 1,100 jobs. It doesn't really hold a candle to Riverview, of course, the big brother city, so to speak. But I think it's just enough urban development for us to start working on some more rural stuff as we move east inside this valley here. So that's what we're gonna be working on today. Going to move across the interstate here and create some more rural areas where we will have some suburban stuff mixed in to kind of simulate that Riverview is growing and it's a sprawling city. So the suburban stuff is slowly eating into what used to be farmland, something I've also tried to mimic here in Briar Rose Field, one of the southern suburbs of Riverview, where we still do have some farmland, but it's kind of squeezed in now between the railway network and the southern edges of this suburban development. And it's the same thing we'll try to create over here. I think the first thing I'm gonna need to do though is upgrading some of the infrastructure here. We've got an interchange here that is going to work fine because it allows for a crossing of the interstate, but then we've got one here that isn't quite up to the task because it can't really it doesn't really work all that well because it's, you know, it doesn't allow for full access to each direction of the interstate, and of course it doesn't really allow you to actually just cross it to go to this more rural area. So that's our first priority, just upgrading this highway. And a simple way of doing this is probably just removing this on-ramp here and then instead trying to squeeze in a 2-laner. And we'll see, we'll need to elevate it, so, and I'll just remove all the snapping because that's pretty much the most fun way to play with the rid roads and City Skylines 2 because the snapping is so forgiving. I say that, but this might be a struggle actually. If we just upgrade here, then that's probably gonna help us a bit. Remove all snapping and try to drag it. Yeah, something like this. And then we're gonna go to an elevation of about, actually I probably only need 7.5 meters to be able to cross. And we're just gonna go straight across. I'm just gonna remove snapping, make it a little easier for me. Straight across like this, and then I'll enable snapping, and I'm just going to go all the way down like this. And let's see what we're gonna do. We are going to create our on and off ramps here. It's just gonna, let's upgrade from here and all the way over here, and we'll see if that's fine. And yeah, if you've probably noticed by now just how easy and fun it is to create interchanges in City Skylines 2. It really is a joy to play with. It's one of the biggest features of the game, that's for sure. Let's see if we can we actually... Yeah, it seems we can actually squeeze in here. Although we may need to just disable snapping once more. There you go. Nice, that enables our connection here. That was pretty easy. Just gonna check down here. Yeah, everything's fine here. It's a looks a bit wonky, but it's one of my earlier interchanges, so I'm keeping it as a reminder of shame. I think the next thing we're gonna do is just try and get an idea of what type of road network we're gonna have here. Now, since it's gonna be a primarily rural area, my idea is to have these 2-lane highways or national roads or whatever we may call them, kind of have a few of those cut through here, and then I'll create a kind of broken grid using these alleys in between, because these alleys can also really... They're the best thing we have currently to pass as like smaller rural roads, I feel. So I'm gonna use those extensively. So we're gonna go for continuous, just gonna enable snapping, and just gonna create the initial road layout. Alright, this is the road layout I've ended up with, and I'm pretty happy about it. There's some gritty elements, and then we've got some randomness squeezed in, which I'm quite happy with. What I'm going to do now is, I mean, it's a complete sin in this game, because trees take forever to grow, so you really appreciate your trees. But I am going to remove the trees from some of these blocks, and this is where I'll have my farms. Yeah, so it's controversial thing to be doing here. I know, but it's hopefully gonna make sense in just a second, because my plan is to mix. Let's see, we actually have a bit of fertile land down here, but for all the non-fertile land, we'll just have to do with livestock farming, which is fine. It kind of looks the same, all the farming, to be honest, or almost at least. So my idea is I'm going to create some farms, and then I'm going to use like rows of trees to map out some other farms as well that they're not real farms that are simulated in game, but they sort of look the part, so should be fine. And creating farms is very pleasant in City Skylines 2. You pretty easily map out your stuff. And I would have wished that they would have included this in City Skylines 1 as well, because I'm pretty sure it's a cool mechanic for like certain DLCs and whatnot. But I'm really looking forward to seeing how they can, implement this mechanic throughout. Let's just check, do we have power? We do not. So let's go underground and get some power to go underneath this bridge. Yeah, okay, that didn't work. It's kind of wonky. And I can't delete that segment now. Because why? Ugh. Let's see if I can save this. No, I'm not gonna be... Yeah, it's a bit buggy, but we'll connect like so then. I'll go ahead and see this. Yeah, water's kind of the same. We'll just have to go underneath the interstate, and we're all connected. Okay, so my idea was just to pick maybe spruce is one of the better ones, because it has a small footprint, and then I'll create a barrier of my own to kind of create a farm here. And then I'm going to zone a residential development, just a house basically. It's gonna be like the main house of the farm. And then I wonder if I can do an industrial building to kind of look like a farm building as well. We're gonna see if that's actually gonna work. I have my doubts, but it's worth trying. But I'll get back to you when I'm done manually placing trees. My favorite pastime. Trees, trees, trees. Alright, I've placed all the trees. Let's see, we'll go for a low density, go for a 4x3, and I'm hopeful that I can get some sort of industrial building built here that's gonna look farm-ish. It's gonna be a, yeah, let's see. We'll let that grow and we'll see if it actually looks like a farm. This does look like a farm, but you know, it is actually a farm. So I am going to go ahead and try this very same technique just across the national road here. Yeah, this is gonna require more trees, isn't it? It is. Wow, that was fun. Let's check over here. Oh, yeah, none of this is gonna work. I don't want two houses, so maybe I should just get better at zoning. We'll expand this to a 4. Yeah, that's gonna give me one house. And yeah, I'm not happy with this look at all. We're gonna try a new building though. We're gonna try the very same over here. This time we'll just grab a little gravel road just to make it a little more interesting. Go down by like so. Get the house all built up. Something like this. And we are gonna once again give this a shot. Come on, give me some agricultural looking industry, please. Now, since I'm already in the mood for self-torture, I think we're gonna make an apple tree area here, which is gonna require me to manually place 200 apple trees. So yeah, let's go. Oof, I'm ready for the straitjacket now. Actually, it wasn't too bad, but I certainly am lacking in some hand-eye coordination here, because it got really wonky here at the end. Oof. And I think this spot here would be a good spot for a small suburban subdivision. So we are going to grab the... Are we going to actually use the alley to create like a smaller road? Yeah, we're probably gonna do that. And then we are just gonna create a very basic modern subdivision road layout with some smooth curvy roads. And I'm going to try and zone my way to a very uniform looking subdivision by, let's see, we'll utilize the very same house throughout. So we'll go 2x3 everywhere with the North American low density residential theme, and hopefully this is only going to spawn one building throughout, and then I can zone in between when the first batch has spawned, and we'll get our completely uniform subdivision. So let's just let that grow and we'll see if it makes sense. And look how lucky we've got with this industrial building. I think that's a pretty good fit for like a rural type industry. We've got like a tank here, maybe with cow poop or something. So we're gonna let this stay. Pretty happy with that. Okay, so the houses do actually look the same, but they are legit like tiny houses. And I don't think Americans in a sprawling subdivision appreciate tiny houses. They appreciate unnecessary space and heavy reliance on their trucks. So I'm gonna have to maybe try upzone this to a 3x3 and see if that's gonna work. So we're gonna try 3x3, and it's looking a little better. I still have a pretty small house, but I mean it is a relatively small zoning size, so why not? While we wait, maybe I should just fix this interchange up a little bit. It's looking a little wonky, and I think a good change we can do here is just to, let's see, we'll go out and let's see if we can join in here instead. It looks a little better. Maybe, oh, what am I doing? Maybe even a connector here. Oh, sweet. And then some road services so that you cannot go left here. Should you be able to go? Yeah, you should be able to go left there. Okay, great. Looks a little better. Let's see how this looks when it's all in the flesh. I mean done, not in the flesh. Behold my super weird subdivision. But I mean, it looks okay. It looks kind of uniform, monotone, all that stuff we want from a cookie cutter subdivision. I think what I'm gonna do now is just draw out a few roads here to create like an additional small suburban subdivision, and then we're gonna fill out more of this area. let's take a quick little tour of what we've built. The fall colors are coming in now, and things are looking really beautiful as we zoom out here of Riverview. I've tried to mix in a few different things. So obviously we've got the dedicated farms, and I think they look all right. I think the game has a tendency to spawn a few too many utility buildings or industrial buildings for farms, which do end up looking a little odd. Also, the farms are probably a tad too small for realistic scale, but we do try to work with a bit of a smaller scale here in City Skylines because it's not really feasible to achieve real life scale. I also dotted in some really small hamlets or villages even throughout. So we've got one here, for instance, and I'm just gonna make them their own district. Actually, I think that could be kind of fun, and then name them. So, whoops. District tool is so much nicer to use now, fortunately. We've got one over here as well. And I really like that look, as we have these small hamlets almost that kind of squeeze in here between all the houses. Oh, sorry, all the farmland and the rural roads. And we've got one over here as well, which I think is quite nice. I imagine these places are actually, I mean, they're probably not as desirable as some of the inner city suburbs, but you know, if you want some of that country feel, rural feel, then you're still relatively close to downtown, right? Especially if you work in East Riverview. I also added a bit of a larger suburb over here, where I made sure to have a good deal of distance between some of the houses so that not all the trees would be removed, and I'm pretty happy with the effect I've achieved because it means quite a few of the houses actually have, you know, forest as the backdrop actually. I don't know why I chose to squeeze in a bit of industry here. It was just for the fun of it, but we do have industrial demand, so it's probably time to designate another industrial area or harbor somewhere to kind of provide the jobs that are needed. I also squeezed in a software company here, Capine. I'm not sure how to actually pronounce that, but I'm fancying their location. I think this is a pretty nice location, you know, making some tricky backend code while you stare out into the woods. You might even be able just to see the skyline in the distance. Yeah, so just trying to add a bunch of different things, trying a few things out and seeing how it works, and I think I'm pretty happy with the results. We've got a pretty steep density transition alongside the interstate here, but I think that's all right. The interstate acts as a pretty natural barrier even between the less build-up areas and the more build-up areas, and I think by adding some dedicated suburban subdivisions such as this one, it doesn't actually look too bad. And we'll just make sure it's a district with a name. Yoink. There we go. Something I would love for the developers to add is the ability to create districts within districts, because I would like to be able to create like a big district here and then name this entire area something, you know, to give it an actual name, and then have these small towns or settlements or industrial quarters or whatever be like smaller areas within the overall area. It's the same thing I'm kind of struggling with here in East Riverview, where I want to designate this as a city on its own, but I would also like East Riverview to have its own unique neighborhoods with character and name. So, I mean, one thing I could do is just create a downtown district here and name that downtown East Riverview, which is what I'm probably gonna do, and then I would create additional districts for the suburbs of East Riverview. But I would like for, you know, the ability to just go in here and add a district in here within the big district. But yeah, I'm hopeful that might be added at some time in the future. Alright, so after enough rambling, I think it's time we do a little more expansion. And I want to move across the river here, so we start digging into this large untouched area. I'm not gonna go ham on development over here because there's a very sizable, nice looking forest where the fall colors are really creeping in now. So I'm thinking of like making it sort of like a big forest full of paths or something, like a real attraction that you'd go to. But we are gonna need to satisfy some of our job demands over here, and I also want to get a water treatment plant in, because if we check our water and sewage situation, water situation's fine. Sewage is a little more iffy. I'm taking the collective poop water from 24,000 residents, and I'm just dumping it straight into the river so that it moves downstream. And I'm pretty sure that my neighbors over here are, you know, kind of annoyed by that. It's not the best practice. So I think we should be able to buy what we need here. I've got 31 points unlocked, so if you guys have got any ideas on what's next on the chopping block, let me know. But first up, we're gonna grab the water treatment plant. And I'll need to get a bridge moving across here, so I'm thinking of grabbing this national road here, Washington Highway as it's called apparently. And then just dragging it out, going about 10 meters up, something like this. Then we'll go, let's see, I would like to have the pillar there in the center, like so, and then I'll just go down a bit so that we pretty much have no changes in elevation here, something like that. Very nice. Then we're gonna drop it to 0 and we'll make like a nice inland curve here. Something like this. Then I'm just gonna... yeah, I have to be careful about the forest, of course. So I'm gonna go straight for a bit and then we're gonna make a sharp turn to the right. And I'll just drag it out a bit further like that, and then not spend too much more time on it, because next up is a bit of terraforming to give ample room for our water treatment plant, or water processing plant rather. So we'll just make it nice and flat here. Want to have some parking lots and stuff in here, some office buildings as well probably. So yeah, just going to build a very simple initial road layout. Let's just see the size of this bad boy wastewater treatment plant. Okay, so it looks pretty sweet. Actually, looks like a big office building, so we're gonna have some office stuff out here as well. I think I'm gonna place it there, then we'll go and grab one of the bigger parking lots. And let's give this parking lot its own dedicated road. So we'll just go out by 90. Go grab the parking lot again. Place it here. It's it's pretty simple, but just does the job. And yeah, I needed room for a bit of office, like I said, so we'll go out a bit. Need to do maybe a little more terraforming. We'll enable contour lines so I can see where I need to start making a turn about here, I think. And then we'll just go straight up here and connect to the national road. There you go. And this one should be able to just cut straight through. Cool. Now I'm hopeful we can zone some low density offices here as well to create like a bit of an office park vibe, really. And of course I'm gonna need to connect this up, so we'll do, let's see. If I connect up underneath the river here, I'm pretty sure we might have like an electricity bottleneck, because we are very far away from like the main transformers, which are, it's basically just connected directly to the southern dam. So we might need to connect to the northern dam, but we'll try just bringing it underneath the river as a start, and then we'll see if that's gonna cover electricity demand. We'll do the same just for piping here. We'll go -20 and we'll just go underneath the river. It's the easiest solution for now. Just gonna hit play and see if we've got any issues with electricity. It doesn't seem to be the case. Although I'm not seeing any of my stuff grow just yet. Which is odd because I do have oh, there we go. I do have the demand. Gonna add one more parking lot here and add a big parking lot here as well. One over here. We can't have enough parking. Not for an area like this where land utilization is very lazy because it's cheap. And we'll let things develop. And while things are developing, we've got a spreading fire here in East Riverview. It's not looking very good, and yes, one reason is that when I open my fire and rescue panel, I've got a single fire station downtown, so it's gonna be a while before we actually get some assistance out here as well. Which is funny for some reason. And apparently Terry Martin has been evacuated safely by moving 5 meters in front of his house, and he's quite happy currently because he's been evacuated safely. And I'm now waiting for hearses here. Oh, whoa, this is pretty morbid. So yeah, I guess the fire engine didn't really make it in time. Let's just say this recent situation has caused a bit of an outcry here in the metro area, so we are going to have to place a new firehouse, and we'll place it out here in East Riverview. And it may not even be the best place to, you know, place it, like coverage wise, but it's a symbolic thing. I'm a politician, right? People died here due to a fire, so now they get a fire station. With all the wood available in this large forest, I think we should start cutting some of it down and seeing if we can make a quick buck. Because we don't need all that much wood here in the city, so I'm pretty confident that if I designate a large wood cutting business, what's it called? then we're gonna make some money exporting that. Oh man. We'll just make a small dirt lane or gravel road in here. Gonna go to specialized industry, forestry, and just place it down here at like the very edge, like so. And then comes the tricky part of designating a really large area that kind of hugs this road as well. So I'll be back in just a second when I've mapped this entire area out. Ooh, this area is massive. So whoever company moves in here, if they cannot make a living exporting wood, they just can't make a living doing anything. And it's gonna be interesting to see how the production is gonna affect our surplus and deficit and potential exports here, because like I said, we've got a very small deficit, but we're not producing anything, so I'm hopeful that we'll be able to export quite a bit. I hope our neighboring cities have they're thirsty for some wood, which sounds completely wrong, but you guys know what I mean. And I just noticed that we've actually got some fertile land over here, so we're gonna continue with a bit of rural expansion as well, because we've pretty much got livestock farming through most of this area currently, because we didn't have all that much fertile land. But over here we can of course move into some grain, vegetable, textile farming. So I'm gonna build a bit of everything, I think. And we've reached big city. The city is coming along nicely. 11 development points, 18 map tiles, let's see, and we've increased our loan limit, so nothing fancy there, but it really means I'm starting to swim in development points and a ton of map tiles as well, which is pretty nice. Anyways, let's see how this farming works. So I think we're gonna go for textile because I haven't really seen that before. And we're just gonna designate a really big farm, I think. Then we'll see how that ends up looking when the machinery starts moving in. So that was the textile, and then over here we're gonna go for some vegetable farming, or maybe in here actually. We've probably got room for 2 farms here at least. And the cool thing is that as long as there's some fertile, then you can still make a pretty big farm. It's probably less profitable by doing it the way I'm doing it right now, by not having the farm just covered a fertile land, but yeah, this looks a bit better, I think. There we go, and we'll add another vegetable farm over here. And I'll just make a bit of a gap between these 2 farms and then see if I can place like a row of trees or something. There we go, 3 pretty sizable farms. And then this we can turn into forest, and we'll need the row of trees up here. And just like with the area over here, we'll have some small suburbs dotted throughout this area. So just gonna disable snapping and get a road drawn real close here to the farm. Something like this, so that we've got room for a few batches of houses in here. And we'll grab the 2-lane road, disable snapping, and create a custom cul-de-sac. There you go. I learned this from the good Teddy Radko. Of course I did. And we've got power and we've got water and sewage out here. So we're good to go for a bit of zoning. Getting a few houses out here as well. And I'm gonna leave a bit of distance between the houses. Lot sizes out here are generally bigger, they're cheaper, more readily available, and I also want some of the trees and forests to kind of poke through between each of the lots. With our Riverview wastewater treatment plant, busy working to keep our sewage water clean. I can remove my poop outlets. Oof, look at this. Awesome. And we should have another poop dispenser a bit down south here. Let's see if I can just find it. Here we go. Yeah, I have to remove this one as well, because we should have more than enough capacity for our sewage treatment plant to handle the current amount of poop. So I'll remove some of these dedicated poop pipes. Got one here as well, which has had a bit of an odd trajectory. Very nice. So before we move on, if you've got any suggestions for some cool names for some of these smaller areas, please let me know in the comments. You of course don't have to come up with suggestions for everything, but let's say you got a suggestion for Birdsong Corner, then just write a comment stating your suggestion for this place. And if you've got a backstory, then feel free to share that as well, and then I'll make sure in the coming episodes to update the names of these small areas with your suggestions. Ooh, our wood exporting adventure is beginning, guys. Very nice. We'll follow up on potential exports when the business is established. It still has very low efficiency because it hasn't been able to occupy all the employee spots yet. Something I want to do before we we wrap up this episode is that now that we've worked so much on the small town, rural countryside stuff, I do want to upzone a bit throughout the city, particularly here in East Riverview. We've just got a ton of demand, especially for high density residential and office demand, which we can only really satisfy by getting some more office towers going. So I think East Riverview is about ready to get a bit of a skyline of its own. It's of course not gonna rival the skyline of Riverview, but it's a step in the right direction. So my approach to ensure that I don't get really big tall towers is to keep the zoning sizes rather small. So I'm just gonna hit pause and go grab high density offices first and start with that. So for instance here on this corner here, I feel that, you know, having an office tower of some sort would be a good bet. So we're gonna go for a 4x4. And then I'm gonna refrain from using 4x4 again somewhere in East Riverview. But we may use a 2x5 for instance. Maybe we can find a spot down here where we can go for a 3x3. Something like that. And maybe maybe that's enough. Or should we have just one building more? We might just go for a 3x4 then. Like so. We're gonna switch gears to our high density residential zoning and use much the same principles. So we'll maybe grab something to upzone. Let's see, we've got a European styled residential building here. We'll upzone. We've got a low density residential building here that's probably due for a bit of upzoning as well. So we'll do a 3x4. Then in between, we're gonna go for some medium density. We'll do the same over here, go for medium density and then mixed housing on this 2x2 because I know that we can grow a 2x2 for mixed. Here as well, we might upzone this to some mixed housing, which is also taller, and then we'll just see if we can select this 4x5, 4x6, upzone that to medium density. And maybe we should see if we could squeeze in a residential tower here as well, although 3x6 is probably gonna spawn something a little too tall. So we'll probably just do 3x4. And then we'll go for some row housing in between, because it's a very narrow lot. And we're gonna see if we can squeeze in some more medium density around here. And then we're gonna upzone. Let's see, we're gonna just upzone much of this to high density commercial, and then we'll of course squeeze in some row housing here because that's the spot we can fit it in. And this is probably gonna be a pretty significant change. We might even do just a bit more around these parts. And that's about it. And to see the most drastic change, I'm going to delete all these buildings. They'll be deleted eventually anyways when new developments are ready to happen, but I'll just delete them up front so that we can see all the stuff grow, which is always so satisfying. I think that was all, and we're just gonna hit play and see how it works out. And you can always use the cranes to get an idea of just how tall the buildings you'll be seeing are gonna be. So in this case, it's not quite Riverview, but it's actually pretty tall. And I might have to remove one of these because I've got a feeling that 209 and 218 Summit Street is actually the same as it, but we'll see when it's all grown. Alright, so things has grown now, and a couple of issues. I've got a duplicate here, which I want to get rid of, and then just turn this into a high density commercial that we have a lot of demand for. And then, I've actually got one more over here as well. Ugh, That's a bit of a bummer. So maybe, let's see if we can just... I'm gonna remove this one. Check the skyline a bit, check the skyline a bit. We're gonna remove this one as well. And I'm just gonna upzone both of these to high density commercial, and hopefully that's gonna look all right. That gives us a bit of a skyline here without being too tall. And it's got a clear, I mean, there's a clear difference between Riverview and East Riverview, which is what I wanted. I'm also gonna remove this parking lot just to try and make this area a bit more dense. So maybe we'll grab an alley and see if we can just... Should we actually try and do a bit of zoning in here? Because sometimes it's kind of fun to like... That's not gonna work, but it's gonna work over here maybe. Create like a small area in here with some row housing as such, and we'll go for a very small medium density and then some row housing. And hopefully that's all gonna grow as well. Looks like it will. That's gonna really help us just densify a bit. I'm not sure I can actually, no, unfortunately this zoning, the tiles we have here doesn't automatically face towards Valley Lane just because it actually looks like it does. But it gives us room to create like a very, very simple little park of some sort. And I've also managed to squeeze in a little lane in here so that we can get a few more row houses in here, because this high rise, it's not very deep zoning wise, which left a bit of an empty space in here, which was sort of odd. But it enables me to create a bit more of an interesting road layout by having these small lanes kind of cut through and add a bit extra density throughout. And I also think it creates for like some interesting streets. We've got this Valley Lane here, which is a blind small road right next to the downtown core of East Riverview. It's kind of cozy. Now, having upzoned East Riverview's downtown area so much, I think it'd be fitting if we also start upzoning some of the low density residential that is right nearby, because it's not completely unrealistic to have this stark contrast. Atlanta comes to mind, but I think having this as row housing is probably a better fit. So we're just going to make sure that we zone it row house. And I may have like a few houses kind of break through the row house areas down here. As we move further north, we'll see more and more low density, but there has to be some sort of a transition at least. I really like to make that, so trying to zone more and more row houses near the downtown area, and then a fewer out here. And we'll see how this turns out in just a few seconds. I'm just gonna remove all these. Be gone. This feels so satisfying watching all these cranes at work. I know it's not the most realistic thing. You'd probably not have these cranes work on like row houses and single family homes, but it just feels nice. Feels kind of satisfying having upzoned a ton and then just seeing all the cranes move in. And that concludes this episode. East Riverview is now pushing about 5,000 residents, and we've added about 100 jobs or so as well, which is pretty nice. Of course, we've also added a pretty large area here, covering a good chunk of the map. And we've also moved across the river here, getting some office zoning in place, getting our... Let's see how it's actually going with our forestry industry. So we are at 58% efficiency, which is creating quite a nice surplus so far. So that's pretty sweet. Anyways, I want to thank you all for watching and all the support. It's been overwhelming. I keep saying that, but I mean it each time I say it, so why not? If there's something that you're just sitting there thinking, we need to build this Riverview now, let me know in a comment, and I'll make sure to read them and take on the feedback and input. The only thing to do now is shoot some cinematics for you guys, and I hope to see you all in the next one. Bye.